America's impressive and immense tech companies shape our regime through their wealth, reach, respectability, and allure. But not that much is known about their worldview. And this is a reasonable question to pose to them because traditional companies like ExxonMobil, Walmart, General Electric don't have a moral and political vision. America's major tech companies, by contrast, incessantly speak about their desire to make the world better. They even say they want to rid it of evil. Perhaps we should discount this rhetoric as fashionable speak, which masks predictable oligarchic motives. After all, one can't build the world's most valuable platform without the rational avarice typical of great companies. Perhaps they have correctly judged that the weaknesses of the political right and have gambled that the left will control the future, and so let the shakedowns begin. I don't think any of these answers are sufficient. One should listen more closely to their words. As Sundar Pichai, Google's current CEO, noted in an interview, "There is a side of me that has viscerally seen how technology can make a difference, and I still feel it. I feel the optimism and energy and the moral imperative to accelerate that progress." Mark Zuckerberg has had similar experiences. He says that at Facebook, we're inspired by technologies that have revolutionized how people spread and consume information. We often talk about inventions like the printing press and the television. By simply making communication more efficient, they led to a complete transformation of many important parts of society. They gave more people a voice. They encouraged progress. They changed the way society was organized. These are not the desiccated prose of a marketing department. There is conviction in these words. They are, as someone has said, possibility junkies. The world that they are actively working to build, one not yet in existence, is seen only through the extension of the imagination and will be brought about through their labors, their creations, their virtue. Great enthusiasm and glory animate the hope of being a founder of a new order, which will perhaps be accompanied even by a new kind of humanity. And for the first time in history, there is enough capital and technology to push this vision. Given the world historic and transformative goals of the individuals leading these companies, we should ask, what kind of a political order and what kinds of human beings are they trying to produce? What, in other words, is their vision of human happiness? Now, you may say, why are we even talking about this? These are crazy people with crazy theories, and it's irrelevant. To that, one might respond, as if crazy ideas haven't in the past been tried with great vehemence and force. These are people with a lot of power who are trying to implement an idea of the good, and they can do a lot of damage in the meantime. To the best of my understanding, I'd like to elaborate these theories and tease out some of the points which they don't say in a full-throated way. My focus here is on Facebook and Google specifically because only they have platforms that reach billions of people daily, many, many times a day. The first part of their theory is that the good of humanity requires the unity of humanity. As Zuckerberg has stated, if people are asking the question, is the direction for humanity to come together or not? I think that the answer is clearly yes, and that's a good thing for him. Google's president similarly notes that it matters that we drive technology as an equalizing force, as an enabler for everyone around the world. Now, we've all heard things like this, and we may too easily dismiss them as just dogmatic or sweet and phony words. But I think these words are serious. And to implement this view, the old barriers to global unity must be removed. Why? Well, in the first place, these barriers can cause disagreement, strife, and war. And in the second place, these barriers obstruct the full unfolding of innovation. And what exactly are these barriers? Well, the leaders of these companies never state this in a full-throated way. These barriers are pretty clearly nations, gods, and the prejudices emerging from them, which form the old human identities that should be left behind in the past. For example, the nations into which we are born make claims on us. They say that your birth matters. It's part of your destiny to be part of this people. Even in our liberal democracy, which takes birth less seriously than any other regime in existence today, the Constitution requires that the President of the United States be born to American citizens. Nations give individuals obligations and demand that they view themselves as separate, though hopefully respectful of the rest of humanity. But the tech world often views this inheritance as impure. Gods also teach us about the true order of things and make rigid demands on the faithful. Moreover, both of these barriers obstruct or circumscribe the infinite unfolding of technology. For example, nations say, innovation must be useful to us, while Christianity and Judaism teach that God provides for man, and technology therefore can be viewed as a form of rebellion. So what's the strategy for overcoming these causes of disunity? Well, by giving the internet to the world, you accelerate the unfolding of two human types in society, which should become the dominant types in all societies. The first of these types is the innovator/entrepreneur. This person creates an infinity of new products, contraptions, whatever the market demands. The motives here, which will animate this type, are avarice and glory. But innovation will not be limited to money-making and technology. The spirit of innovation emanating from the innovator, like it has from our Silicon Valley, will spread to society at large. This spirit should seek also to alter social arrangements. One can innovate on one's government, society, family, genders. The second spirit to be unleashed through this worldwide access to the internet is the spirit of consumption. And I don't just mean the consumption of consumer goods. Think more broadly about the major uses of the internet today. All will engage in limitless consumerism, amusements, pornography, and social media. These two spirits work in a dialectical relationship with one another, each pushing blindly the other into new pleasures, vanities, consumption. Zuckerberg speaks of, quote, building enough common ground so we can all make progress together, i.e. common ground among all human beings. The former barriers, which connected man to eternity and ordered his character, will be replaced by the glory and avarice of the inventor and the private hedonism of the receiver of innovation. The unity of this new world will be on the grounds of pleasure and utility. The nation comes to be viewed as a framework for protecting pleasures, and all the obstructions in the form of laws and traditions must yield to this new ideal. But access to the world's information, whatever that means, Google likes to say that, is not so seamlessly transforming the old evil identities toward techno-enlightenment and unity. Just look at the 2016 election, which deeply upset Google's C-suite. Luckily, however, there's a fix. As Eric Schmidt, former executive chairman of Google's holding company, stated, the American general view dictates that bad speech will be replaced with good speech in a crowded network, end quote. But this proved wrong because of misinformation. So now Google is, I'm quoting him, working very hard to use machine learning and AI to spot these things ahead of time so that the publishing time of evil content is exactly 0. Human reviewers make mistakes, but machines don't. So there are two ways to prevent this kind of evil which keeps sprouting up and is internal to us. The first is deranking, this is Schmidt again, information that was repetitive, exploitative, false, likely to have been weaponized, and so forth. Putting that information down at the very bottom of a Google search on page 5,000 so that you'll never find it. The second is, well, you should consult the kind of ever-evolving hate speech statements published by Google and Facebook to see that that is a ratchet that only goes in one direction. And the general message of these statements follows the logic of identity politics, roughly this. Historically marginalized groups will have a full voice. That voice should be amplified, while alleged oppressors will not have a voice. That voice should be ratcheted down or deleted. And if you read the academics, I've done more digging than I wish any of you to do into the academics that advocate for the criminalization of hate speech. You there see some people, one prominent person, says that even factual claims that are bigoted should not be permissible. And so why not censor and derank all sorts of material that helps this kind of moral cause of enlightenment and liberation? Machines, then, will purify the mind from evil and will force enlightenment. The minds behind the tech world often imitate the model of natural science. They want transformation, to make one being into another being, like sand from glass. And this is constantly applied with enormous hope, I find. Now, while minds are being purified, artificial intelligence applied in other fields, where promised, will outperform the human mind, and in the process will cure ignorance, as I've mentioned, cure disease, and create so much wealth that it'll be necessary to pay out to everybody else a universal basic income, a UBI. And here I think you arrive, in my thinking anyways, at the final happy state, according to some of these people. Now, one writer has especially analyzed this state to figure out if it's happy or not. And you'll be surprised to learn that it is Dostoevsky in a book called Notes from Underground, which is not read frequently enough anymore. It's very difficult, but it has great parallels. It's the narrative of a man who lives in a society flooded by scientific doctrines, and who, upon the death of his uncle, receives what we call today a UBI, or an inheritance, according to him. He is therefore free to develop his personality fully. And St. Petersburg, the setting of this book, is similar to tech world cosmopolitanism. It's ruled by technocrats and science, and there's no belief in a nation, nor does religious faith have any potency. The book is, in a way, an analysis of what happens to human pride and vanity once gods no longer form them through divine commands or laws, and when nations no longer give man duties or a history. Living in the eyes of others, which is the definition of vanity, rather than in relation to eternity or a history, means creating an entire personality modeled on the hopes of duping others into believing that you are what they want you to be. Vanity becomes a roller coaster where the trough is self-hatred and the peak is absurd, unmerited self-respect. Living out the dictates of ungoverned vanity means depression, mental disorders, unhappiness. Needless to say, this character is not suited for citizenship or self-rule. This unnamed character's pride also rebels against the determinism of modern natural science, which teaches him that he's merely a mechanical being. His life becomes a small-scale, willful rebellion against this teaching, and his rebellion is particularly expressed through doing cruelty to others. Not large-scale cruelty, but petty, tiny acts of tyranny to deny that he is merely defined by cause and effect. He is a frail, vindictive man and a model, I think, of what may come. So just a few words to conclude. I don't think the fulfillment of this project of enlightenment is at all possible, but a lot of damage can be done in the process. Human beings need a home in the world, which nations provide. They need to live in regard to eternity, which religion provides. These two authorities are the things which structure the human character and sentiments. You cannot create decent, intelligent, and free citizens through access to information. In practice, this theory about global enlightenment, in my opinion, will just amplify the vices of each regime into which it descends. More tyranny for other regimes through the help of technology, who can employ the AI developed in American companies and in American universities, not only against their populations, but eventually against us. We gave up these crown jewels, and they're going to be used against us. As for us, the life of utility and pleasure is at odds with self-rule, which requires assertion, aggression, thinking, and courage. Thank you very much.